Welcome to another episode of All Four Downs Podcast. This is my college football rankings week 13. And I tell you, there was a lot of fantastic games, a couple of upsets, and there could be a lot of shakeup when it comes to the top 25. But I'm projecting my version, so it could be debatable and everything else, but I'm going to lay everything down. But first, I'm going to start off with the standings, because the standings is very important, especially when we're getting near to the conference championship. Right now, the American Athletic Conference, Army and Tulane both clinch a playoff spot, and they will both face each other for the conference championship. But remind you, Army still has to play Navy the week after for the Commander-in-Chief Cup. That's going to be fascinating. Atlantic Coast Conference, SMU. Look, SMU, in my opinion, probably already inched their way into the door for the championship. And then we all have left is Clemson and Miami. Now, Clemson still has to play two more games. They got Citadel, which doesn't count, but then they played South Carolina. So they already done when it comes to ACC games. On the other side, Miami, they are 5-1. Should they win the next two games, they clinch the ACC. And more likely Miami versus SMU. SMU plays Virginia and California. Now with Virginia, it'll be their first time in history that they play one another. But for California, they pretty much own them. But again, anything can happen in the next two games for SMU. And for Clemson, they probably more likely need SMU to lose so they could get in and squeeze their win for the championship. So those three schools, those three teams, they're still at large. In the Big 12, BYU upset this week, and now they're tied with Colorado. Colorado is in charge of their own destiny. If they win out, they're definitely in the college football playoffs. But BYU still has to play Arizona State, which they don't do well at Arizona. Then they play Colorado, again, I already told you that they have to win out, right? But Iowa State needs to win out and hope for BYU or Colorado to lose the next two games. Crazy, right? Anything can happen. Should it happen? I don't think so. So I'm all in for Colorado, not only to win out for the regular season, but definitely become the Big 12 champions. Let's see if that works out. In the Big 10, Oregon, Indiana, Ohio State, and Penn State. Now, Oregon, all they have to do is win out, and they're in, right? They're 8-0. Indiana Hoosiers, 7-0. They got a big game. Indiana versus Ohio State. The winner there would, first possibly, if Indiana loses, they more likely going to be eliminated from even discussing their way into the college football playoffs, okay? Depending on how the score is. Ohio State, it's going to be at Ohio State, so you would think it would be favored for the Buckeyes to win. Penn State, 6-1, they need a loss from Indiana. They need Ohio State to lose the next couple of games. So they're praying for Ohio State not only to lose to Indiana, but also lose to Michigan. So in other words, I don't think Penn State should be in the picture right now, but they're 6-1, but there's only a couple of games left, right? So it is what it is. But my bet is that Oregon, Ohio State will probably be the most likely to be in the Big 10 championship. And the Southeastern Conference. Now, this one gets a little bit difficult, so hear me out here, all right? Texas right now is in the lead in the SEC, then followed by the Texas A&M. The Georgia Bulldogs already finished. They already done with the SEC games. So their final record is 6-2. They beat Tennessee. That was a big one, especially they got themselves back into the college football playoffs. For Tennessee, I don't know where they're going to be ranked, but it's not going to be pretty for Tennessee. I don't think so. Okay? All depends how the selection committee is going to be. All right? Alabama and Ole Miss, they're both tied 4-2. Now, the scenario is crazy. Okay? So bear with me here. Texas still has to play Kentucky and Texas A&M. A&M still has to play Auburn and then Texas. Georgia, again, already completed the SEC games. They play UMass this coming weekend, and then their rivalry with Georgia Tech. Tennessee, at right now, look like they might be eliminated, okay? But they do have a win over Alabama. Alabama, well, they have to play Oklahoma and their rivals, Auburn, right? They could clinch their way with both those wins because they beat Georgia. But they're going to need help with Texas beating Texas A&M. Crazy. Ole Miss needs Alabama to lose a game. And if they lose, then Ole Miss could jump on top and enter their way into the SEC championship. Crazy. But right now, it just seems like Texas are, let's say, they control their own destiny to get to the SEC championship. All right. Sounds good, right? All right. Now the Mountain West Conference, Boise State, Colorado State, UNLV. Right now, Boise State should be locked in for the Mountain West Conference Championship. However, for Colorado State, they need to win out and then compete against Boise State. But should Colorado State lose and UNLV win out, UNLV will go ahead and play Boise State for a rematch for this season, right? So Boise State controls their destiny, but Boise State has to win out because if they lose, it opens another door for another conference to take away their spot in the college football playoffs. I keep saying about the playoffs and everything else. Remind you, 12 teams are locked in, right? The 5 highest ranked conference champions receive an automatic bid. The 4 highest ranked conference champions are seeded 1 through 4 and receive a first round bye. And then 7 at-large teams determined by the remaining highest ranked teams. And seeds 5 through 8 will host the first round games. And again, this is debatable, but I'm going with the flow here. All right. My rankings 20 to 25, Colorado, Iowa State, Arizona State, Washington State, Illinois, and Kansas State. Colorado controls their own destiny. However, there's a lot of hot teams out there. They're trying to squeeze her in and cause some arguments. 15 through 19, Tennessee, Tulane, BYU, Clemson, and South Carolina. South Carolina is the hottest team. I'm curious to see whether they'll be 19 or better, but they do deserve it. Clemson, 8-2. Tulane already clinched their way to the conference championship, but is it good enough? All right. I know that the committee does not see the American Athletic Conference as one of the top conferences. And then Tennessee, to me, falls down to number 15. In the bubble, sorry to say this, and I know Ole Miss beat Georgia. I know. But what value do you have when Georgia defeats Tennessee? And Tennessee was high ranked, okay? Ole Miss and Miami in the bubble. And I say this because Miami and SMU are tied, all right? Potentially tied there and could face each other in the ACC championship, as I already explained to you in the standings. So here's my top 4. Oregon, Texas, SMU, Boise State. And yeah, the committee is going to have Miami ranked higher than SMU. But you got to give some respect to SMU. First year in the ACC, and they're just beating down the ACC. I can't say the same for Miami because they had a lot of close calls. Yet I understand what their record is and everything else, but you got to give some respect to SMU. I'm giving it. But of course, whoever wins the conference championship will be part of the Final Four right there and get a first round bye. Okay, Texas control their own destiny there, as I explained, and Oregon right there. But Oregon and Ohio State championship, again, it's fabulous the way it is. And Boise State being at number 4, they're there because BYU lost this past weekend. And then here's a lookout for the whole entire prediction, and I'm projecting this could be this way. But again, you could put in Ole Miss in there, right? But who's in and who's out? How is this going to play out? So without further ado, I'll start from the top and bottom. 9-8, I got Georgia versus Texas A&M. That could be a possibility, but then again, Texas A&M does play Texas. I got Army right now. I mean, they play Notre Dame this weekend, so let's put some respect on Army because, again, they got nothing to play for really, because once they finish their career, they're going to serve our country. So let's put some respect on that. I have them against Ohio State, State number 5. Then I got Penn State versus Indiana. That all could change this weekend because Indiana and Ohio State played this weekend. And then Alabama versus Notre Dame. Again, both teams just control their own destiny. However, for Notre Dame, they lose one more game and they're completely out. And then we could always go back to what happened against Northern Illinois. Notre Dame versus Army at Yankee Stadium. Given that Army's home game is going to be interesting, and I know Notre Dame just demolished Navy. Now they go against Army. I'm just saying, like, I'm hoping for an upset. I'm cheering out for Army, especially myself being an Army veteran. But yeah, anyways, this is my top 12. This is my scenario. What is your take on my top 12? And do you think out of my top 12, who will be left out should Ole Miss still remain in the college football playoffs? Let me know more. Put your comments below. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. Follow me on Facebook. And, of course, my Twitter is ov@_HHW show. I'm Obi1. Thank you for listening. Gotta love some football, right? Take care, everyone.